What's good, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the One More Thing podcast. And I'm going to try to keep today's one short because, I think everyone appreciates short and concise points to hear, right? So, let's just straight away get into it. This episode is If You Didn't Know, Now You Know. Basically, what this is all about is just a few common things that we think we know, but actually are not as clearly defined as we think we know it. Yeah, so it's kind of like we know it exists and we think we know what it means, and we even use it like in our conversations and use it to explain things, but we are not as really clear or definitive as to what it really means, right? Or it could even be things that we are not aware of that affects our life. But hopefully after this episode, if you didn't know, now you know. So let's get right into it. Alright, so number one is this term called motivation. I think a lot of us know what is motivation, but do we really know how it works? And if so, how can we then use it in our benefit? Yeah. All right. So if you didn't know, now you are going to know. So the basis of motivation is in the avoidance of discomfort. Okay, I heard this explanation by Stephen Bartlett. He does the Diary of a CEO podcast, and he has a book called The Diary of the CEO, which I'm actually dying to read, but I have a lot of things on my to-read list. So anyway, it is the avoidance of discomfort. So for example, maybe not example first. Okay, I will say what we commonly think motivation is. Motivation is just something that, propels us to do something that we desire. I think that is just the most basic understanding of what motivation is. All right, so I'm going to try to either reframe the way you see it or just let you see how I came to understand and subscribe to what understanding I subscribe to. So for example, how can I motivate you to drink more water, right? So nowadays, nobody likes to drink water. We like to drink like sweet drinks. We like to drink coffee. We like to drink basically anything that is not plain water, right? So, how can I motivate you to drink more water? So I'm going to give you a salty treat. Let's say something that is really like a lot of MSG, right? Like, I don't know, think of the saltiest thing that you know, and I'm going to give that to you to eat. And then right after that, I'm going to put you in a sauna with the heat cranked up to the maximum and give it like 20 minutes, not even that, maybe even 15 to 10 minutes, right? You will be feeling the discomfort of dehydration, and you get a dry mouth, you get that little like, that feeling in your mouth, and you start to maybe have cramps here and there, and you're feeling a little bit faint. The only thing you can think about is you really need some water. So it is in that avoidance of that discomfort of dehydration, right? So it's going to increase your motivation to drink water. Or another example is, how can I motivate you to earn money? So I can remove all excess that you have to your current money. So let's say I take control of your bank card. So I just hold it. I hold on to it. So you have no access to it, right? And then I log you out of your like mobile app, and I remove all your Apple cards or Samsung Pay or whatever it is. And I take your cash away, right? So you can't buy your daily essentials like food, water, and whatever you need. And yes, you can go and borrow. You can go and, ask people to lend you some money and everything. But after a while, you are going to face or accept the discomfort that you are unable to provide for yourself, and then you will be more motivated to earn money. You'll find ways to go and get some money. Either it is by, I don't know, doing menial chores for money, like, oh, I'm gonna sweep your floor, give me $5 kind of thing, So yeah, it is in the avoidance of feeling that discomfort of not being able to be autonomous. So you are not autonomous. You can't. You're just not self-sufficient in financial aspects, right? You feel that little bit of insecurity that you are not able to provide for yourself. Maybe you feel a little bit, what's that word? Demasculated. Like, you don't feel your worth, right? That is the big discomfort, right? So, yeah, you're avoiding that discomfort, and that is going to motivate you to do something even more. Or the usual one that I always tell all my students is, how can I motivate you to run faster? If I were to did not a big steak, a raw steak on you, and release a bloodhound behind you, that discomfort of knowing that that bloodhound is going to bite and tear off whatever is in the vicinity of that big steak, yeah, that is going to motivate you to run like hell, right? So, yeah. Essentially, if you really go to the human nature of what drives someone, a human, to do something, is to avoid being in a state of discomfort. Okay, so I'll say a more realistic or more, what's that word, relatable example is exercise. Okay, let's use the term exercise, because everyone has done exercise, everybody has wanted to exercise, everybody has tried to exercise, and everybody has probably failed to keep up with that exercise regime. So think about it. Why do people exercise? Because being unfit and in their minds getting judged by people or themselves about their state of health is uncomfortable, right? People, staring at you, and then you thinking that, hey, this person thinks that, hey, I don't look healthy, I'm maybe a bit plump, a bit, fat, a bit overweight, it's people are judging me for it, right? So that's a discomfort, right? We don't feel comfortable in our own skin, even if it's not from others, but even from ourselves. We are judging ourselves, like, hey, why am I not more fit, right? Like, look at that person, he's so fit, and I don't feel comfortable in my own skin. And that's why people get motivated to exercise. Then, okay, so let's say they start exercising, they'll be like, yeah, okay, I'm gonna get on this plan, I'm gonna do this exercise. So then why do people lose motivation to exercise? It is because the physical discomfort of exercising slowly outweighs the discomfort of being judged. Think about it. All right, so the physical feeling and discomfort of like sweating and out of breath and feeling like your heart is going to explode because it's so intense, that's more uncomfortable than whatever judgments that motivated us in the first place to exercise. Or we forget about that discomfort because now this is the most right here, right now discomfort, that physical feeling. And then because that physical feeling is more uncomfortable, so that's why we are now motivated to stop exercising, because we want to avoid this current discomfort. So then why do they suddenly, like these people who stopped, suddenly get back their motivation to exercise again when a close friend meets with a health scare? Let's say they get a heart attack, they get a stroke, or they get some kind of heart-related disease or health scare, right? Because death is the ultimate discomfort, right? The ultimate discomfort is we don't want to die. We want to prolong our life. So their motivation was not actually lost. Their motivation was always there. It's just, what were they motivated to do? and that motivation is based on the avoidance of a certain discomfort. So the first one was the discomfort of being judged, of being insecure, the discomfort of not feeling confident. So that motivated them to go and exercise. Then when they were exercising, the discomfort was the physical discomfort of, exercising. So then they were motivated to not exercise, to avoid that discomfort. And then the last example was when they, was in a close, someone close to them had a health scare, right? That is related to, maybe their cardiovascular and blood pressure and whatever it is, right? Cardiac stuff, right? So their motivation then was, oh no, I don't want to be in that position because that looks very uncomfortable. So then their motivation is now back to avoiding that discomfort, right? So motivation is not what we think it is. It is not some magical source of power that comes out of nowhere and needs to be conjured up with some kind of optimal lifestyle. There is no losing motivation. At every single point, it is only what discomfort is the biggest, and then that becomes what we are motivated to avoid. So motivation is a good source of power to kickstart whatever it is we plan to do. And we have to know that since growth and change is irrefutably an uncomfortable process, we have to be prepared, and we have to know that this motivation that we're feeling is not going to last, because the journey is going to be uncomfortable and our motivation is primed to push us, to drive us away from discomfort. Unless, that is, if the discomfort you are avoiding is bigger than the discomfort of the process. That is the exception, right? So I'll give an example. A refugee braving deathly conditions to avoid a war zone, right? You hear about the treacherous journeys across borders, and to cross over, you have to swim in this for very long and then cross the desert under the hot sun for so long. That is a very uncomfortable process, but the discomfort that they are avoiding in the first place is even worse than that discomfort. So another one was in the above scenario of the exercising, right? So the discomfort of death is worse than the discomfort of feeling like shit and going to the gym. That pales in comparison to death, or almost dying, or the thought that if I don't die from this, I might be bedridden, I might not have my entire bodily functions as per normal. Right? So if you don't understand what motivation is, how can you dream to make it work in your favor? So if you didn't know what motivation is, now you know. Let's move on. Number 2, quick. Number 2 is emotions. Okay, so emotions are something that we are all very aware of. And if you watch Inside Out, I think that is a pretty great representation of the emotions within us and how they kind of like, try to take their place controlling the wheel. But what are emotions? Do we really know what they are? So, emotions are nothing else but somatic signals that deviate from our baseline. They are not objective, but subjective to the individual, and hence are not reliable indicators of objective truths and facts, but extremely reliable indicators of personal truths and facts. So if you have learned science, and I think everyone has learned the basic science, you will be familiar with the word homeostasis. If you are not familiar, either you are not Sec 2. I think we learned it in Sec 2 or maybe Sec 1, whatever it is, which is the body's inkling to always bring itself back to its default optimal working condition. Right, so there are many of these homeostasis systems in place for various conditions, like those that are catered to light, like how when we are in a bright room, our pupils will contract, but when we are in a dark room, they dilate. I think that's a wrong example of homeostasis. Okay, another one is body temperature. right? So we always want to maintain, I forgot what's the normal body temperature. I think 36-ish, 36, 37 degrees, right, in our body, right? So how to regulate that? If the body senses is too hot, it's going to vasodilate, so it allows blood to flow quicker. So that increases our heart rate, that brings the blood vessels up to the surface more, we sweat more. Cooling, if it's cold, they vasoconstrict, so they slow down the blood flow, etc., so that they try to maintain the optimal body temperature, right? So there's many more. And one of these somatic systems is the emotional system. So what does this word somatic mean? Somatic means that it affects the body physiologically. So there are physiological symptoms or actions that we do that are triggered by this emotional system. So it's a physical thing that we feel. So if you didn't know, every emotion has a physiological response, and by understanding what discomfort you feel at which part of the body can actually inform you what you are accurately feeling, more so than what you think you are feeling. Okay, so the premise is that every emotion you feel has a localized physiological response, right? So for example, you're nervous, butterflies in your stomach, right? You are sad, you are heartbroken, you feel it in the heartbroken, right? You are excited, you will feel it in your limbs because adrenaline, right? You are you're very stressed, you feel it in your head, you got a headache and everything like that. So you're aroused, you feel it in your sensitive parts, right? So every kind of emotion has a somatic and localized physiological discomfort. The word is discomfort because it is not comfortable, right? So if you are able to actually, I'm sure there's a list on the internet to go and search for what emotions are linked to which body reactions. You will be able to more accurately define what you are feeling rather than basing it off what you think you know or what you maybe have learned, because we learn things from other people, which learn things from other people, which learn things from other people, which may not be true. So it's just passed down information. But yeah, that's something interesting that I really think is worth research on. So anyways, if we are low on energy, the body sends hunger signals, which then makes you uncomfortable, right? You feel it in your stomach. And hence, as we learned earlier, motivates us to find food and eat because there's a discomfort, right? We are motivated to avoid discomfort. So if we feel discomfort, that hunger feeling is uncomfortable, we are then motivated to go find food and eat. So similarly, if we are shouted at by our boss, the body sends these fear signals, the emotional fear signals that causes adrenaline, especially to the limbs, hence why we feel more localized discomfort there. So if you try to think back to the last time you were actually scolded, you will feel very agitated, especially or restless, especially in your arms and legs, right? You'll shake your legs, you will move your arms around, you will, maybe if you're standing, you would not really want to stand still, right? And why? Because that is our fight or flight, right? So in that response, we either are priming ourselves to fight, use our arms and legs to defend ourselves, or flight, use our arms and legs to run away. So that's why the energy is being sent to our arms and legs. So now here's what you need to understand, okay? A bodybuilder who has to eat 5,000 calories a day will get hungry more often than a regular person. So that does not objectively represent the truth of how much calories or how often a person gets hungry by an average human, but only the subjective truth of a person of a bodybuilder's baseline. So in similar comparison, however much emotions we feel does not objectively represent the truth about what the situation objectively is, but what we subjectively perceive it to be in comparison to our own baseline. And our own baseline is calibrated by our upbringing, past experiences, and everyday interactions. So too confusing. Another way to look at it is your emotions are your problem. As blunt as it may sound, your emotions do not accurately represent whatever is happening. It only represents what you think is happening. And so you have to know that you need to process your emotions so that you can more objectively handle the situation. There's one saying that I like: emotions are irrational. So if you are responding and taking your emotions to the surface, you are going to be irrational. So your emotions are emotions which should only be used to tell yourself how you feel and not to put it on other people as an objective reaction to what is happening. In other words, express your emotion, don't hold it inside, express your emotions, but don't put your emotions on anything or anyone. Your emotions contain more information about yourself than it does about the situation. For example, if let's say I am unhappy about a particular thing, correct? So yes, I can say, okay, I am unhappy, but I'm not unhappy at you. I'm not unhappy at whatever it is. I am just unhappy, and I just want to express I'm unhappy, and that's just it, right? So I'm not saying, oh, this sucks, you suck, this idea sucks, right? So you just have to say, right now I'm feeling this unhappiness, right? So let me process this. It's not about you. It's not about this thing. It's just something that I need to deal with, and I need to figure out for myself why I'm feeling like this. And maybe if you are unable to get over it that quickly, then you have to be able to say that I am unable to engage in this conversation because I don't think I'm going to be helpful, right? Until I am able to regulate what I'm feeling, figure it out, and then come back with a more objective perspective that can help the situation, right? So those who are not aware of their emotions will be an oblivious slave to their emotions. So if you didn't know what emotions are, now you know. Next one. Disagreement versus misunderstanding versus betrayal. So what people get wrong in relationships, both social, romantic, whatever it is, relationships in general, is in lumping all transgressions into betrayal, which is the most severe one out of the three that I mentioned just now. That is why many people suck at maintaining relationships or struggle to even build a relationship. So for the sake of definition, these are what each means: disagreement, misunderstanding, and betrayal. Okay, so disagreement is essentially when two or more parties have differing beliefs on a particular topic and are unwilling to compromise. Okay, I'll just, before I move on, all these definitions are ones that I have, allocated by myself. I have given them these definitions based on my understanding, my reflection, based on my use of it, and what I feel is most appropriately what it represents. Okay, so don't be like, oh, I want to Google what does this mean, and it's not exactly what you say. Okay, I believe every word has an objective meaning, and every word has a subjective meaning, right? So this is my subjective meaning. So disagreement is when two or more parties have differing beliefs on a particular topic and are unwilling to compromise. So that is what I define disagreement as. Misunderstanding is when information is incompletely transferred, which changes the context and therefore conclusion of the topic, or when the interpretation or translation of the information is not congruent with the actual information. So that is what I define misunderstanding as. And last one is betrayal. It is when a party knowingly goes against their given word of agreement to another party. So each scenario requires definitely a different response and solution, a different degree of response, a different intensity of response, and obviously a different solution. So I find that the key in avoiding and managing all these is in communication. When you're building a relationship, communicate what your beliefs are honestly and clearly, upfront. What usually happens is we expect others to know them, and when they go against them, it is then amount to betrayal, because even though they did not give their word of agreement to respect our beliefs, we feel like they somehow did because we expect them to know what it is, and then they went against it. Right? So there's this quote by Neil Strauss. He says, unspoken expectations are premeditated resentments, meaning that what we expect of others but don't say is essentially us just waiting for them to give us a reason to resent them. Because how can they know what we want if we do not tell them what we want? No one in the world is a mind reader. Even the most skilled body language reader or profiler will not get the accuracy of what a person is motivated to want. Right? So essentially communicate, okay? Disagreements are normal and should be normalized more if we seek to uphold diversity in the world. The problem comes when we respond to disagreements as if they were betrayal. Sorry, my bad. I skipped the line. The problem comes when we respond to disagreements as if they were betrayals. Misunderstandings can be avoided, not completely, by effective communication skills, which is becoming a lost art in this era of technology. So if you're wondering why society is struggling more and more to understand each other, go look up the trend of when this started. Most likely you'll find that it coincides with the rise of technology. I would be willing to bet on that. And then betrayal can be minimized, again, not completely, by understanding and reacting appropriately to the aforementioned scenarios. Right? So how do we avoid disagreements and how do we avoid misunderstandings? If you avoid these two, then I think betrayal will be less likely. There are still going to be those a-holes who are just a-holes and they are just how they are. They will just end up betraying you. But we do not then confuse people who misunderstand and disagree as betrayals. Yeah. So we kind of more or less narrow down who are the real betraying persons and then who are just not agreeing with us and misunderstanding us. Yep. So if you didn't know that these are three different things, now you do. Disagreement, misunderstanding, and betrayal. So learn to recognize which is which and react appropriately. Okay, so the next three, I will try to go through it quickly. I think this next one's going to be quite fast. So this next one is intelligence. So what is intelligence? Okay, so Alex Hormozy is one of my favorite guys out there. He defines intelligence, and I have come to adopt this as well because it makes sense. Intelligence is the rate of learning. It is a measurement of speed. Okay, so I'll give you an example. Let's say a dancer auditions for a certain team and ends up not getting into the team, and then a coach tells them why and what they need to work on. For example, okay, they need to work on their consistency in their efforts throughout the sessions, right? And then have stronger movements and increase or better their performance, right? Their coach then offers the dancer a re-audition, let's say maybe in a month's time, or maybe even in 2 weeks' time, correct? So now if the dancer immediately is able to learn from that in a short amount of time, so in this, let's say 2 weeks, right? This dancer is able to work on all these and change all of these, then you can consider that dancer to be intelligent because they are able to understand what needs to be done, what needs to be changed in order for them to get what they want. Right? As compared to someone who is not as intelligent, or to use the blunt word dumb, who is going to do the exact same things, not do anything differently, but still expect to get a different result. So whether it is learning a new behavior, a new skill, new information, the faster a person can learn whatever it is, the more intelligent that person is. We often confuse knowledgeable with intelligence. Knowledgeable is a measure of how much information one has. It is a measure of quantity. So a knowledgeable person is not necessarily an intelligent person. And I believe more often than not, a knowledgeable person is too arrogant to be an intelligent person because they are a know-it-all. They think that they know everything there is to know and that whatever they know is right. So they don't have to learn any more things. So the way that they're going to learn is slower because they're not as inclined to learn. So rate of learning is slower, hence less intelligent. Right? So we have a measure for cognitive speed, which is intelligence, and quantity, which is knowledgeable. So what do you think the measure of quality is? And I believe you have to be a smart person to figure it out. So if you didn't know that intelligence is this is what intelligence means, or what I feel it means, then now you know. So be intelligent. Don't just be knowledgeable. Nowadays, being knowledgeable is easy. A lot of resources out there. Go to school, get a lot of tuition, got a lot of resources on the internet. But are you intelligent? I'll give you one more example. So if you're the kind that likes to watch podcasts, how much have you actually changed about yourself? You can watch 1,000 podcasts about self-help, but remain in the same position. So are you intelligent, or are you just gaining knowledge? So the next one is interdependence. Now I'm going to start with codependence. So a codependent person is a person who usually is the giver, so the person who always gives something, and they feel worthless unless they are needed by and making sacrifices for the enabler known as the taker. So codependency then is a circular relationship between two codependent people. Essentially, a codependent person gets their emotional needs met through other people, and it is almost like being addicted to a person. So there is a thought that it is like magical thinking or belief in which your behavior can control someone else's behavior. In other words, what you give to whoever it is not for them, but actually for you yourself to feel emotionally met. And if the other person doesn't react how you want them to react, you will not be able to have your emotional needs met. So it's a very maybe it's a very complicated thing to understand. So if you don't understand it, maybe it is something that does not relate to you yet, or something you're not ready to process. But if you somewhat understand it, then yeah, maybe it's something that actually you are facing, you are accustomed to, or you are witnessing, or yeah. Okay, so I'll give you some examples, and then maybe from there you can kind of get a better idea of it. Okay, so for example, if you have a friend who is upset, you take it upon yourself that it is your responsibility to make them feel better. And if you are unsuccessful in your ways, you feel useless or worthless. Another example, you take it upon yourself that you have to fix everyone's problems because that's secretly where you gain your self-worth from. Right? So you always are one to help everybody, which is good. I'm not saying it's bad. Okay, so you have the need to help everybody, but the bad thing then happens when if nobody responds to your help or nobody is actually helped by your help, you feel useless. Right? Yeah, so that's essentially where you secretly gain your self-worth from. Right? So the subtext of that, which some people may read, is that you think so lowly of them that they aren't able to fix or work through their own problems and have to require your help in order to do so. So some people might get that thought if they are actually self-reliant and are actually more independent and don't require help immediately, right? Maybe they're the kind that if they need help, they will ask for help. So by you offering help, which of course is a great thing to do, you are kind of subtext again that they will read is, oh, you think I can't handle this myself, or you think that, I'm unable to work on this myself, and that, kind of thing, right? So yeah, or unconsciously also, that's kind of like what you are meaning, that as much as it is you want to help someone out of goodwill, you just are signaling to them that they are not good enough to do it themselves, so you have to go and help them. Right? It's worth a thought. I'm not saying that it's true always, but it is worth a thought. So another example, okay, in case those are still a bit far-fetched for you. Another example is that you have upset someone, and beyond the succinct apology and appropriate corrective actions you have already done, right? A normal thing to do, succinct apology, you apologize for what you've done, and then you correct the things that you are doing so that it aligns with a more normative behavior that is, socially acceptable, right? So beyond that, you go above and beyond in doing and saying things in the hope that they will no longer be upset, because if they do not sway from being upset at whatever it is you did, and your succinct apology and appropriate corrective actions did not do anything, then it must be a you problem and not a them problem. When the real problem is in other people not being able to regulate their own emotions. So this piggybacks off the previous point where I said, for those who are able to self-regulate and more independent, they know how to work through their own problems. Those are the people who would probably read that or infer or kind of, take away from you offering the help without their asking, is that you think that they are unable to do it for themselves. Right? So those are the ones which okay, only offer help, and then if they say no, then they say no, right? You don't force help on them. But on the flip side are those who are unable to regulate their own emotions, unable to work through their problems, and because of them doing that, they are still holding on to whatever it is that upsetted them, and then you have to then be the one that solves the problem for them, right? And just nice, you are the kind of person who gets their self-worth from doing that, so it kind of enables, both things happening. And again, I'll give a more real life experience, not from my real life, but people's experiences. Not saying I know people who do this. So for example, this refers to parents who get upset and stay upset, and then the child, in hopes of making a change and getting approval in their parental figure, resorts to using their behavior to incite the hope of change, which then gets validated when their parents silently move on. Right? So it's like you did something, maybe you broke a vase at home, right? And then your parents are super upset, right? So you try to be extra good, right? You try to be more helpful with different things out around the house, right? Because you hope that in doing so, you make up for the thing that you have done, and because your parents are still unhappy. Make sense? So it is that hope that your behavior will change someone else's behavior, when in fact their behavior is their problem, right? I'm not saying do nothing, just apologize, say what you will do differently, and have that reflective aspect of the process, correct? But beyond that, there's nothing else you can do. And if they are upset, they are upset. That's their problem. They have to learn how to regulate their emotions. It is not up to you to regulate it for them. You can help them, but it is not in your control. Or another example is friends who get mad at you, and then you have to profusely apologize and then be at your best behavior and treat them specially, buy them things, praise them more, right? In the hopes of gaining back their approval so that they are not mad at you anymore. So that is codependence, right? You need that emotional validation from other people and you can't give it to yourself. So you always need other people to give it to you, right? So not all codependency is bad. I believe it is actually the cornerstone in learning how to be socially adept, aware, and empathetic. But in not knowing what codependency really is, what the problems really are with codependency, we run that risk of being fully codependent without knowing its counterpart, which is interdependence, which is what I started this whole thing with. So if you didn't know, now you know. And one final one. Okay, this is definitely going to be shorter than my usual ones. So hopefully it is short and sweet. And this one will be really short. Okay, the last one is maturity. So we all know what maturity is. If you are my student, you have heard me say maturity a lot. And if you don't, now you are hearing it. So maturity refers to the ability to respond to a given situation appropriately. And I think for this one, I'm gonna let you figure out more of it on your own, right? So go and figure out what you don't know about it, and then after that you can say now you know. But I will give you my few pointers about what I think maturity is. Okay, so reason why I'm doing this is because maturity is a very vague thing. It's very hard for us to achieve something vague. It is easier for us to achieve something that is more pinpoint and defined. So if you want to know my take on maturity, here it is. So a mature person takes responsibility for their actions. They react with equanimity. They put into practice what they learn. They know their limits and correctly calculate the reasonable risks associated with an action. They take into account their influence over other people. They are resilient. They know how to manage their lives in a self-succinct and self-sufficient manner. They don't use emotional blackmail. They know how to enjoy themselves and make an effort to do so. And most importantly, they fulfill their responsibilities and obligations. So these are what I kind of have thought about as a definition of maturity. Still working on it. There's still more to think about. But as for now, these are what I would say makes a mature person. I would go even more to say that no one is really 100% fully mature. It's always good to have the kid within you. But when the time calls to be mature, then these are the things that one should be trying to embody and practice. Yes. Right, so now you know. So if you didn't know, now you know. All right, so these are my 6 things that I have put into today's content. If you didn't know, now you know. And again, last words for this is, why am I doing this, or why was I interested in doing this? Is because I have now a fascination about defining things, because defining things makes it more clear what to attain and then how to get there. It's, for example, the last one, the maturity, right? We all want to be mature, but that's a concept. Maturity is a concept. It is a vague umbrella term. How can you attain something so vague? The only way is by defining what it really is. What are the attributes of it? What does it really mean? What do you have to do? Then it becomes more attainable, and you are able to then apply it because you know in what scenarios does what apply to what, and so on and so forth. right? Again, going back to the first one, motivation. We all know what motivation is, but in a vague sense. It's very loosely defined. So if you are able to say that motivation is the avoidance of discomfort, you are then able to use it because you know what it means and you know how to then apply it. So yeah, that is why I am doing this. Yeah, so hopefully y'all know more things now. If you didn't know, now you know. And that's all for today's episode. Thank you so much for listening. Please subscribe or share or repost or quote stuff from my podcast so that, it helps whoever it is destined to help. I think a lot of people could deal with more non what's that brain rot stuff. Yeah, to put it bluntly. Alright, so that's all for today. Peace.